Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm the Mystical Green Beanie, and that was not a fart. That was just me adjusting my chair. Anyways, I wanted to talk about Substack. Now, for those of you who don't know, Substack is a newsletter website that's essentially going to be a new comic book publishing house for creators and creator-owned work. From my understanding of it, it basically acts like Patreon or OnlyFans. People are subscribed to a creator, and they will get access to exclusive content that they'll be posting, be it new issues of a creator-owned series that they're working on, or dirty little secrets regarding their time at Marvel and DC, and how the proverbial sausage was made, or in some cases, focus tested and never saw the light of day. And honestly, I think this is exactly what the comic book industry needs, while also thinking that Substack will wind up being a colossal failure. I mean, at least in its current form. So hear me out. I'm a huge supporter of American comics fully embracing the digital market. I think one of the main contributing factors in the industry's current stagnation is this over-reluctance to do so, because this is an industry that more or less put all of its eggs in the direct market basket, and much like American imperialism and racist ideology, for a time, it was good. Because the comic book industry saw a massive spike in revenue when publishers started making comics specifically to support the direct market by making comics that would more or less print money by relying solely off the speculator market. But now I feel like I'm dipping into other issues entirely. The point is, so much of the industry as we know it now evolved from marketing practices to bolster the direct market, as that was the most profitable way to pump product in the 80s and 90s. Flash forward 30 years, things are a little different. People read comics differently now. The culture around comics is even different now. People who are new readers, a lot of the time, are less interested in what Marvel and DC have to offer, and are more interested in the indie market. But the indie market is handcuffed by whatever Marvel and DC are doing, because they're the market leaders. But Marvel and DC are handcuffed because they're bound to the convention of market practices put in place over 30 years ago to bolster the direct market, which was their most profitable revenue stream, which now, ironically, are keeping the direct market on life support. So the industry is in kind of a weird bind. A lot of it is centered around keeping the direct market alive, or at the very least, the direct market as we know it. And that's not me bashing comic shops. I used to work in one. I love my local comic shop. I practically grew up there. But I do think the industry needs to evolve about as much as the direct market does. But going back to what I was saying earlier, people just read comics differently now. It's less Marvel and DC and more, what's going on with that weird shit on the cover over there? That's not Batman. That's a weird D&D furry couple. And the racially ambiguous alien lady is holding a laser in one hand and breastfeeding in the other. I want that shit. And further, people are less interested in getting their comics physically, or at the very least, floppies. They're more interested in checking out these comics in trade, or reading graphic novels. But in the rare case that they are going to go through with the weekly grind, it's gonna be digital. And that's why I think the comic book industry should, untuck their nuts from the local comic shop scene and prioritize other markets. Mainly digital. Which brings me to Substack. I love the spirit of Substack. I think the concept of such a platform is long overdue. One problem, I think Substack itself, in the manner in which it's being approached, will suffer an implosion that's almost equal in spectacle to that of the Twin Towers on 9/11. Now, I hope it doesn't. My hope is that I'm proven wrong and Substack is a major success. But I don't think it will be, mainly because it's built on a faulty and somewhat narcissistic premise. Like I said earlier, it's a platform where creators will post exclusive content and blog posts like, this is what inspired my Substack comic that you just read. Or, sometimes I mix my dick cheese with ricotta and make lasagna. And, just weird shit like that. And Substack is really promoting writers, because right now, the comic book industry is living in the age of the writer. And I've seen several artists on social media get really pissy about this, but I think a large part of why this loops back around to the culture surrounding the comic book industry in the 90s. The 90s was the age of the artist. People cared more about what artist was working on a book, and the writer was chopped fucking liver. And it was this mindset that was one of the key factors in the creation of Image Comics in the 90s. A lot of artists got together and made their own publishing company, and they were all superstar artists. They were glorified celebrities. In fact, some of them were small-time celebrities, going on late-night talk shows and making appearances in movies and whatnot. So yeah, the 90s was the age of the artist. But over time, things started to change. People started paying attention more to the writers behind these things. One of the main reasons why is because pretty pictures ain't worth shit if the story behind it isn't worth a damn. And a lot of comics in the 90s started having that problem, or at the very least, the popular comics that were driving the market forward had this problem. And that was a bit of a turnoff for a lot of comic book readers, who in some cases dropped comics as a result, which was kind of a problem for the industry, as this happened around the same time as the speculator bust. And the industry fell into a pretty bad spot for a little bit. So the marketing strategy had to change going into the 2000s. The industry started promoting superstar writers along with superstar artists. People like Alan Moore, Grant Morrison, Peter David, Ann Nesenti, Warren Ellis. They'd already cut their teeth in the 80s and 90s and proven to readers that they could tell a story with good artists working with them. But, soon guys like Jeff Johns, Greg Rucka, Brian K. Vaughan, Mark Millar, guys who were doing comics in the 90s but were often overshadowed by the artist, they started getting major promotion. Suddenly, the conversation was, are you reading this new Bendis Daredevil book? As opposed to selling the book based off the strength of the artist, Alex Maleev. Oh my god, are you reading Jeff Johns' Green Lantern? He's the one fixing the mythology. He's the one telling the story. And, Ethan Van Sciver's there too. The industry started transitioning from selling comics based on the strength of the artist to selling comics based on the strength of the writer. And flash forward 20 or so years, the comic book industry is now living in the age of the superstar writer, which, it is what it is, but due to a lot of short-sighted business practices of the 90s, one of them being putting artists on a pedestal and kind of just letting them do whatever the fuck they wanted to do as a means to milk the speculator market, well, the industry is significantly smaller now. And this is where we run into the inherent problem with Substack. Substack is literally Image 2.0 with a sprinkle of OnlyFans. It's a model built on promoting superstar writers, and okay, Image got away with that because it was leaning really hard on the speculator market. A new character was introduced in this new single-issue physical comic book with a superstar artist that's very popular and profitable right now. And I'm gonna buy 500 copies of it so that hopefully in 15 years I can put my child through college. But with this, unless each of these comics is gonna be an NFT, a digital snowflake, there would be no reason for speculators to shit what's left of their brains through their dicks over this. Because that's why Image and the creator-owned market boomed in the 90s. So, as far as profit goes, I'm not sure if Substack has any long-term profit value. Granted, people who are fans of writers like Nick Spencer and Chip Zdarsky and James Tynion IV, they'll probably really like this platform. And, again, this is just my understanding, but I could be wrong, writers are getting paid up front for this, right? If so, that is also a big selling point for anyone who wants to publish their work through Substack, because it sure as hell beats working for the big two or some of the other publishers where, you do work for hire, and after the work, they never follow up with you on the hire part, where you get paid. And even if you do get paid, it's 6 months late, so you couldn't follow through on a car payment. Or you've been evicted because you didn't have money for rent. So, in that regard, Substack is a comic book creator's wet dream. But outside of that, I don't see much growth for it. And my biggest fear is that Substack fails and the industry tucks its tail between its legs like a dog that's just been pegged by Whitney, Wisconsin, and says, this is why digital doesn't work. So let's continue spiraling into oblivion using the same antiquated model that we've been saddled with since the 1980s. And again, I'm not trying to shit on comic shops. I love comic book stores. But the model has to evolve. Comic shops have to evolve. The industry has to evolve. And I think being more open about embracing digital is one of the steps that's necessary in that evolution. I mean, not to sound like a parrot mimicking a broken record, but look at manga. That's a market that's literally already gone through what the American comic book industry is experiencing right now. And they found a solid solution to the problem. Embrace digital. Lower the cost of print media. And prioritize stories themselves over the ego of the creators. I don't know, that just seems like a no-brainer to me. But the industry's just going to do what the industry's going to do. You can lead a man to the bathroom, you can pull down his pants, but you can't make him not shit himself. I guess. I don't know where I was going with that analogy, but you get what I was trying to say, right? You got it. But yeah, I think Substack is a flawed model, but the energy behind it is exactly what the comic book industry needs. But what about you? What are your thoughts regarding Substack? Let me know down below in the comment section. Also, if you like this video, hit the like button, share, support the channel, and if you want to see more content like this, all you have to do is subscribe. I'm the Mystical Green Beanie. Thank you for watching, and as always, until next time, adios nachos, adios.
Show me what you got. This is over.